Attention to all founders, hustlers, and hardworking entrepreneurs. The Hustle's 2024 Entrepreneurship Trends Report is out now, and it's a goldmine of valuable strategies, data-driven insights, and expert tips for elevating your business. Have you ever wondered how successful business owners are staying ahead of the crowd in today's super competitive market? Well, we talked to over 500 small business owners to uncover how they're doing it and did a ton of research so you don't have to. We know you're busy building your business, so we got you covered. The Hustle's 2024 Entrepreneurship Trends Report is something you don't want to miss. This right here is the future of entrepreneurship. So stop what you're doing right now and check the link in the show notes to get that report right now. Good morning, everybody. It is Wednesday, October 9th. I'm John Weigell here with Mark Dent, and this is the Hustle Daily Show. Pickleball has made its way into the hearts and minds of many, and it's also made its way onto the courts of tennis players. Tennis players are losing court space all over the world to the now fastest growing sport in America, and the urgency is mounting for the USTA, the U.S. Tennis Association, to do something about it. So who's going to be serving who in this ongoing turf war? We'll get to that in a bit, but first let's give you the hits and headlines in business and tech. To kick us off today, Samsung's vice chairman, Jun Young-hyun, in a public letter on Tuesday, apologized for Samsung's failure to meet expectations in the AI chip race. This comes as Samsung's share price has fallen about 24% since the start of 2024. Now all the phone companies, all the tech companies have to be AI companies, and I guess Samsung has to keep up. Next, cool startup alert. French-made app Revise, which some call the TikTok for education, has reached 2 million users over the last 2 years. And on Monday, Revise announced close of a seed round of about $6 million. From there, we go to fast food once again. In a follow-up from last week's beef inflation talks, I'm happy you're here again, Mark. It came out that McDonald's filed a lawsuit on October 4th in a New York federal court alleging that the world's top meat companies have been purposely conspiring to inflate the price of beef since 2015. The two largest beef giants in the suit are Tyson Foods and JBS USA. We talked about both of these last week, Mark, so they're back again, and McDonald's is suing them as the root of this beef inflation.
Everybody is kind of pointing fingers regarding price gouging here. I feel like consumers have pointed the finger at McDonald's as well as at grocery stores. So McDonald's now is pointing the finger at the beef suppliers and saying that they have essentially conspired against them, a type of price fixing, which is something that is not legal, of course, if this did indeed happen. But it's not an accusation that just gets kind of bandied around, that's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to know if this is the real answer to the question, who inflated all my beef prices? And it seems like McDonald's wants to think that it's these beef manufacturers creating the high prices for your now expensive Big Mac meal. Even though McDonald's on the other end has a little bit of agency themselves, I believe, on how the pricing goes. But the cost of beef does influence a lot of how their menu shakes out at the end of the day.
Yeah, for sure. And to just kind of show how these fast food stories just never seem to end right now with inflation. There was another thing that I was just reading earlier today where Lamb Weston, the largest supplier of French fries to chains like McDonald's, they're going to lay off around 4% of its workforce. Their stock has dipped about 35% this year. So, I mean, people are just feeling the pain, like whether you're a supplier or the actual restaurant.
It's hitting the beef. It's hitting the fries. Mark, your chicken meal. It's coming. Something's coming. I don't know what it is.
I know. Yeah, it's going to be like $14 next time.
Yeah, probably. All right, from fast food, let's move to Temu. Temu is taking control, the remote control that is. The company is now offering a $4 alternative Amazon Fire TV remote control for those who have lost their remote, as I have many times inside my couch. The Amazon official remote replacement sells for $25, so quite a bit higher than the Temu version. This is kind of the latest in Temu moving to take some business away from Amazon. And finally here, a new report from the Congressional Budget Office claims that the rich really do get richer. You're not just imagining things. The report details that America's wealth has quadrupled between 1989 and 2022, of course, adjusted for inflation, and that the top 1% now owns a third of the country's total wealth. That is a large chunk. Okay, on to the main story today. Pickleballers and tennis players have likely begrudgingly fought over court space a lot in the past few years. With pickleball's growth and the ease of converting one tennis court into two pickleball courts, I've seen it done myself. It's quite the job. There's a ton to be said about where racket sports are going. So, Mark, can you tell me just a bit first about the completely outstanding and astonishing growth we're seeing for pickleball in the last few years?
It has been astonishing. And pickleball a few years ago was just truly a niche sport. It had about 3 million people who played, according to the Sports and Fitness Industry Association, in like the late 2010s. I'm somewhat of an early adopter to pickleball because I played it in high school gym class back in the aughts.
Same.
Oh, yeah. Nice.
Actually, me too. They offered it at my high school gym and it became a thing 2 years ago.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, you mean that thing that I did for a unit in 10th grade? I forgot about that.
It was extremely surprising. And actually, when I was an intern back in college, I worked for the Indianapolis Star. And I did a story on pickleball then because it had started to become big among seniors in Indiana.
Whoa.
But anyway, now it's basically quadrupled since then.
Wow.
You're talking anywhere from 10, 12, maybe even 13 or 14 million people in the US who play at least semi-regularly.
Wow.
And that doesn't include, of course, the growth that has happened essentially in the pickleball industry. You're talking about paddles, balls. There's these big restaurants in the South and in the Midwest called Chicken and Pickle, where people just go to eat chicken and play pickleball.
No way.
They're just palaces. They're so large.
Whoa.
People go to them and they go there all the time.
Dang. Yeah, the industry is really, really growing in a lot of places. I was in Austin, Texas earlier this year in about April, and right near my place where I was staying, a giant new pickleball facility opened. And this is an indoor, private, huge facility with 2 indoor bars, no tennis courts, only pickleball courts. So it's fascinating to see it grow that much. And, just the equipment industry in pickleball is projected to grow to $155 billion. In 2023, it was at $65 billion. So that is a big, big jump it's going to make. And I guess that brings us to the problem here. Pickleball is taking over, and obviously there are some people creating pickleball courts, but a lot of the pickleball courts are tennis courts, retrofitting tennis courts for pickleball playing, which is becoming a big problem in the tennis community, it seems like.
Well, a lot of it just comes down to how we tend to think of the spaces where these courts are getting built. So, obviously some private clubs, they have tennis courts, they have pickleball courts, and there becomes some sort of probably discussion at that particular private club of what's going to happen. But that's just for a small percentage of them. But most tennis courts, maybe they're at public parks. They're part of some sort of neighborhood. So maybe a homeowners association has some sort of care over them. And there's not really a lot of money out there for those types of groups to just build a new pickleball court.
Yeah.
A pickleball court can cost probably at least $10,000 and could certainly cost multiples of that, 20, 30, 40,000. So there's just this sort of clash where you have these new pickleball players who are well, we want to play pickleball. And because tennis is more of a legacy sport, those aren't the people who are going to city council meetings, right?
Right.
To say
right.
Keep our tennis courts. Instead, it's people who are calling their local councilmen or talking to their neighborhood leaders and saying, let's turn this into a pickleball court. And so that's what's been happening. Mm-hmm. And so what the Wall Street Journal had was this really sort of interesting story. They were, as far as I can tell, one of the first to share how much this has been going on, at least according to the USTA, that's the US Tennis Association. So take it with a grain of salt. Mm-hmm. USTA says that around 10% of tennis courts have been repurposed for pickleball.
Wow.
And I think you found this number, I think it's from the Tennis Industry Association, that there's maybe around 270,000 total courts. So yeah, that's about 30,000 courts that have been taken over if we do some back of the envelope math.
Yeah, and that's a ton. And, we talk about how pickleball is increasing its player numbers. Tennis is also slightly increasing its player numbers year over year.
Yeah. Thanks to Zendaya.
Yeah, right. Thanks to Zendaya and those 2 dudes in that movie.
Yeah.
And since both are increasing at such a rapid rate now you have 2 players from these 2 different sports trying to kind of use the same types of spaces. Because pickleball courts, although they are a different size than tennis courts, they use a very similar material to a tennis hard court, at least in the hard court construction. And you're right, they are expensive to build, so it's hard to get more of them. And the ones that we have are pretty finite right now.
Totally. And I think the other part of this is when we're talking about limited resources, like especially financial resources for building more courts, to some degree limited space, is that I think that people who are making these decisions are just wondering, like, how big is pickleball actually going to get? And how much bigger is tennis going to get? You know, the USTA predicts they'll have around 35 million players by, I think, 2035. They're at about 23, 24 million right now. There's 10, maybe 12 million pickleball players. So are they actually going to continue to grow? The last thing that anybody wants to do is to like build a court that nobody uses or repurpose a court that nobody uses.
Yeah.
I'll send this out as a sort of note of caution. I was trying to find some historic stats on tennis because tennis used to be a lot bigger. It really hasn't boomed until literally just these last couple of years because of the pandemic and Zendaya. But, you know, back in 1975, there were an estimated 35 million players playing tennis every year. So that sport has obviously plateaued and even declined a little bit, you know, in ensuing decades. So any type of investments that are made in either of these sports, you have to just kind of recognize that trends come and go.
Right.
And we don't know how much they're going to grow and how much they're going to end up falling. And so that just complicates, I think, everything.
Yeah, and this seems to be a good reason why the USTA is trying to kind of combat pickleball a little bit. They've introduced this new sport, quotation marks. It's called red ball tennis, and they claim it's being played by about 20,000 people at more than 500 venues across the US. And red ball essentially is a fun, or maybe I wouldn't say fun because tennis is fun, but it's more of like a socially charged game of tennis, a bit easier to pick up for people, and it uses a proper tennis court. So when you talk about kind of a return on an investment, to use an actual tennis court for multiple things, whether it is tennis or this red ball game, seem to be the move going forward. Is it as popular as pickleball? Not nearly, it seems.
Yeah, not remotely, it seems.
But they are trying to do something.
Yeah, it seems like an okay idea, I suppose. I think like red ball, from what I can glean and from what I've heard about it a little bit, is that it has been played by like kids generally who are just trying to pick up the game. So sure, I guess I could imagine some like adults playing it to be social, but it seems like an odd fit.
Yeah, I mean, who knows? Like pickleball was pitched to me as like a thing for old people.
Yeah.
And here I am playing it. So anything could happen.
Right, exactly. You never know.
Yeah, exactly. All right, and that's going to do it for us today. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in to the Hustle Daily Show. We're a proud part of the HubSpot Podcast Network. Our editor today is Robert Hartwig, and our executive producer is Darren Clark. We've got a lot more tech and business coverage in our newsletter. If you're not subscribed, go get signed up at thehustle.co/email. Throw us a follow on Instagram, and go get that tennis court. We'll see you tomorrow, everybody.